Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. The click of polished shoes echoed through the sterile corridors of Thompson Enterprises, punctuating the rhythmic hum of fluorescent lights. Mark Thompson, the epitome of corporate efficiency, strode with purpose towards his corner office, his mind already occupied with the day's agenda. With every step, he could practically hear the ticking of the clock, measuring out the precious seconds of productivity in his meticulously planned schedule. As Mark reached for the doorknob, his assistant's voice pierced through his concentration. "Mr. Thompson, there's an urgent call for you on line 2, she announced, her tone carrying a hint of urgency. Mark sighed inwardly, already bracing himself for another wave of demands and deadlines. With a resigned nod, he veered towards his desk and picked up the phone, ready to tackle whatever crisis awaited him on the other end of the line. "Thompson speaking," he intoned, his voice crisp and professional. "Mark, it's your cousin, Sarah," came the hurried voice on the other end. "I have some news about Uncle Harold." Mark's brow furrowed in confusion. Uncle Harold? The reclusive relative who had all but vanished from the family's radar years ago? What could possibly be urgent about him now? "What about Uncle Harold?" Mark prompted, his curiosity piqued despite himself. There was a pause on the line, followed by a hesitant sigh. "His passed away, Mark," Sarah replied softly. "And he left something for you." Mark's heart skipped a beat, a rush of emotions swirling within him, confusion, disbelief, and a twinge of sadness for the uncle he barely knew. But amidst the tumult of feelings, one question burned brightly in his mind: what could Uncle Harold possibly have left for him? As Sarah explained the details of Uncle Harold's will, Mark's world tilted on its axis. Fabulous, the name alone seemed to mock the seriousness of his existence. A struggling drag club nestled in the heart of the city's vibrant nightlife was now his inheritance. Mark could hardly believe his ears. Drag queens. Sequins and stilettos. It was as if Uncle Harold had left him a ticket to a world utterly foreign and incomprehensible to him. And yet, amidst the chaos of his thoughts, a small spark of curiosity flickered to life, a tiny voice urging him to explore the unknown, to embrace the unexpected. With a mix of trepidation and intrigue, Mark made a decision. He would step into this new role thrust upon him by fate, face the challenges head-on, and perhaps, in the process, discover a side of himself he never knew existed. The neon lights of the city's nightlife flickered to life as Mark's sleek sedan pulled up to the curb outside Fabulous. The vibrant energy of the club seemed to pulse through the air, mingling with the faint scent of perfume and cigarette smoke that hung in the evening breeze. Taking a deep breath to steady his nerves, Mark stepped out of the car and made his way towards the entrance. As he approached the door, he could hear the muffled thump of music from within, punctuated by bursts of laughter and lively chatter. Pushing open the door, Mark was greeted by a dazzling display of color and movement. The interior of Fabulous was a feast for the senses, with glittering costumes adorning the walls and a stage bathed in a kaleidoscope of lights. The air was thick with anticipation, as patrons eagerly awaited the evening's entertainment. Mark's eyes swept over the crowd, taking in the eclectic mix of patrons, drag queens in towering heels, flamboyant club kids, and curious onlookers alike. It was a far cry from the buttoned-up world of boardrooms and business meetings that he was accustomed to, and yet, there was something undeniably exhilarating about the atmosphere. As Mark made his way through the crowd, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease creeping over him. The staff, clad in their flamboyant attire, eyed him warily as he approached, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "Lola, darling, we have a visitor," a voice called out from the stage, drawing Mark's attention to the center of the room. There, bathed in the spotlight, stood Lola LaRue, the club's headlining drag queen, resplendent in a gown of shimmering sequins and feathers. Lola's gaze locked onto Mark's, her eyes sparkling with mischief as she descended from the stage and sashayed towards him with all the confidence of a seasoned performer. Well, what do we have here?" she purred, her voice dripping with honeyed sarcasm. Mark swallowed hard, suddenly feeling out of place in his tailored suit amidst the sea of glitter and glamour. "I'm Mark Thompson," he began, his voice sounding oddly small in the din of the club. I'm the new owner." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd at his words, and Mark braced himself for the onslaught of questions and skepticism. But to his surprise, Lola merely arched an eyebrow and flashed him a sly grin. Well, looks like Uncle Harold finally passed the torch," she remarked, her tone tinged with amusement. "Welcome to the family, Mark." With those words, Lola extended a perfectly manicured hand towards him, and Mark hesitated for only a moment before clasping it in his own. It was a gesture of acceptance, of solidarity, and in that moment, Mark felt a glimmer of hope amidst the uncertainty. The days at Fabulous passed in a whirlwind of activity for Mark. Each morning brought new challenges and unexpected surprises as he dove headfirst into the world of drag culture, determined to learn the ropes and earn the trust of his eclectic staff. As he navigated the intricate dynamics of the club, Mark found himself drawn to the flamboyant world of costume design and stage production. Under Lola's patient guidance, he learned the art of sequin stitching and feather fluffing, immersing himself in the creative process with a fervor he hadn't felt in years. Yet, amidst the chaos of costume fittings and rehearsals, Mark couldn't shake the nagging sense of doubt that lingered in the back of his mind. Despite his best efforts, he still felt like an outsider in a world that thrived on acceptance and inclusivity. One evening, as Mark lingered backstage, a familiar voice broke through his thoughts. "Mark, darling, what are you doing lurking in the shadows?" Lola's voice rang out, her silhouette illuminated by the soft glow of stage lights. Mark turned to face her, offering a sheepish smile. I was just watching the rehearsal," he admitted, gesturing towards the stage where the performers were practicing their routines with precision and flair. Lola chuckled softly, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "You know, Mark, you don't have to be a spectator here," she said, her tone gentle yet firm. "This is your club now, and you're just as much a part of it as anyone else." Mark's brow furrowed in confusion. "But I'm not a drag queen," he protested, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Lola placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "Darling, being a drag queen isn't just about putting on a wig and a pair of heels," she explained. "It's about embracing your inner diva, unleashing your true self, and letting your light shine bright for all to see." Mark's gaze softened as he absorbed her words, a flicker of understanding dawning within him. Perhaps, he realized, being a part of Fabulous wasn't about conforming to a certain image or identity, it was about celebrating diversity, embracing authenticity, and finding the courage to be true to oneself. As the weeks passed, Mark threw himself into the daunting task of revitalizing Fabulous, determined to turn the struggling drag club into a thriving hotspot for the LGBTQ+ community. Yet, with every step forward, it seemed as though new obstacles arose to challenge his resolve. One particularly challenging obstacle came in the form of dwindling finances. Despite his best efforts to cut costs and increase revenue, Mark found himself facing mounting debts and unpaid bills, each one a painful reminder of the club's precarious financial situation. Frustrated and overwhelmed, Mark sat at his desk one evening, poring over the club's financial records with furrowed brow. He knew that if he didn't find a solution soon, Fabulous would be forced to close its doors for good, leaving its vibrant community without a home. Just then, a knock sounded at the door, interrupting Mark's thoughts. "Come in," he called out, straightening up in his chair as Lola entered the room, a concerned expression on her face. "Mark, darling, are you all right?" Lola asked, her voice soft with concern. "You've been cooped up in here for hours." Mark sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm just trying to figure out how to keep the club afloat," he admitted, his tone weary. "But no matter what I do, it seems like we're sinking deeper into debt." Lola crossed the room and perched herself on the edge of Mark's desk, her gaze steady as she met his eyes. "You know, Mark, you don't have to do this alone," she said gently. "We're all in this together, And we'll find a way to get through it, I promise. Mark's shoulders sagged with relief at her words, a weight lifting from his chest as he realized that he didn't have to bear the burden of saving the club on his own. With Lola's unwavering support and the dedication of his loyal staff, he knew that they could overcome any obstacle that stood in their way. With renewed determination, Mark and Lola set to work brainstorming ideas and strategies to increase revenue and attract new patrons to Fabulous. And though the road ahead would be difficult, Mark faced it with a newfound sense of hope and optimism, knowing that as long as they stood together, they could weather any storm that came their way. They then made a decision that was unique, and maybe the only one they'll ever need. The decision weighed heavily on Mark's mind as he paced back and forth in the dimly lit confines of his office. Becoming a drag queen himself, a thought that would have once seemed absurd to him, now loomed large in his thoughts as a potential solution to Fabulous' dwindling customer base. With each passing day, Mark witnessed firsthand the magic and allure of drag performances, as Lola and the other queens captivated audiences with their dazzling routines and larger-than-life personalities. And yet, despite their best efforts, the club still struggled to draw in the crowds it desperately needed to stay afloat. It was then, in a moment of clarity, that Mark realized that perhaps what Fabulous needed was a fresh perspective, a new face to shake things up and breathe new life into the club. And who better to take on that role than the owner himself? With a sense of resolve, Mark made his decision. He would become a drag queen, a decision that would not only push him far outside his comfort zone but also challenge his preconceived notions of gender and identity. As he emerged from his office, determination shining in his eyes, Mark found Lola waiting for him, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I take it you've made up your mind, darling?" she asked, her voice tinged with excitement. Mark nodded, a mix of nerves and anticipation swirling within him. "I'm going to do it," he declared, his voice steady despite the butterflies fluttering in his stomach. "I'm going to become a drag queen." Lola's smile widened into a grin as she embraced him tightly, her enthusiasm infectious. "I knew you had it in you, Mark," she exclaimed, her eyes shining with pride. "Welcome to the sisterhood, darling." And so, with Lola's guidance and the support of his fellow queens, Mark embarked on his journey of transformation. He immersed himself in the world of drag, honing his makeup skills, perfecting his dance moves, and crafting a persona that was equal parts fierce and fabulous. As the night of his debut performance drew near, Mark felt a surge of nerves and excitement coursing through his veins. Would the patrons of Fabulous accept him as one of their own? Could he truly embody the spirit of drag and captivate an audience as Lola and the others had done so effortlessly? Tension simmered beneath the surface as Mark prepared for his debut performance as a drag queen at Fabulous. Excitement buzzed through the air, mingling with a sense of anticipation and apprehension as the club filled to capacity with eager patrons. But amidst the electric atmosphere, a shadow loomed on the horizon, the threat of Veronica Vixen, the rival drag queen hellbent on seeing Fabulous fail. Rumors had been swirling for weeks about Veronica's underhanded tactics and attempts to sabotage Mark's efforts, and tonight, it seemed, would be no exception. As Mark stepped onto the stage, resplendent in his glittering gown and towering heels, he could feel Veronica's eyes burning into him from across the room. The air crackled with tension as the two queens locked gazes, each one determined to emerge victorious in this high-stakes showdown. But as the music began to pulse through the speakers and Mark launched into his performance with all the grace and confidence of a seasoned performer, he found himself momentarily swept away by the magic of the moment. All thoughts of Veronica and her malicious intentions melted away as he lost himself in the rhythm and energy of the music, basking in the adoration of the crowd. Yet, even as Mark dazzled the audience with his talent and charisma, a sense of unease gnawed at the edges of his consciousness. He couldn't shake the feeling that Veronica was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And strike she did. Midway through Mark's performance, a sudden power outage plunged the club into darkness, eliciting gasps of surprise and confusion from the crowd. Panic rippled through the room as patrons scrambled for their phones, casting feeble beams of light into the inky blackness. But amidst the chaos, Mark remained calm,
his determination unshaken. With a flicker of defiance in his eyes, he raised his voice above the din, his words ringing out clear and strong. "We won't let anyone dim our light," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of conviction. "Not tonight, not ever." And with that, Mark continued his performance, his spirit unbroken by Veronica's petty attempts to sabotage him. For in that moment, he realized that true strength lay not in the absence of adversity, but in the courage to face it head-on, with grace, resilience, and a touch of diva flair. As the lights flickered back to life and Mark's performance drew to a triumphant close, the crowd erupted into thunderous applause, their cheers echoing through the club like a chorus of victory. The night air hummed with anticipation as the doors of Fabulous swung open to reveal a dazzling spectacle of lights, music, and glittering costumes. It was the grand reopening of the club, and the energy was palpable as patrons poured in from all corners of the city to celebrate the triumph of love, acceptance, and resilience. Inside, the club pulsed with life as performers dazzled the crowd with their electrifying routines, each one a testament to the spirit of Fabulous and the vibrant community it represented. Mark, resplendent in his finest drag attire, beamed with pride as he mingled with the guests, his heart overflowing with gratitude for their unwavering support. But amidst the revelry, a familiar figure caught Mark's eye, a vision in sequins and feathers, strutting confidently through the crowd with all the grace and poise of a true diva. It was Veronica Vixen, the rival drag queen who had once sought to destroy Fabulous from within. Mark's heart skipped a beat as Veronica approached, her expression unreadable as she stopped before him, her gaze piercing and intense. For a moment, the air crackled with tension, each one locked in a silent battle of wills. But then, to Mark's surprise, Veronica's lips curled into a small, wry smile, a smile that held no trace of malice or resentment, but rather a begrudging respect for her adversary. "Well, Mark," Veronica began, her voice laced with a hint of irony, "it seems you've proven yourself to be quite the formidable opponent." Mark arched an eyebrow in surprise, unsure of what to make of Veronica's sudden change in demeanor. "I suppose you could say the feeling's mutual," he replied cautiously, his tone guarded yet curious. Veronica chuckled softly, a sound like tinkling bells in the night air. "You know, Mark, I never thought I'd say this, but perhaps we're not so different after all," she mused, her eyes glinting with a newfound sense of camaraderie. And with that, Veronica extended a hand towards Mark, a silent gesture of reconciliation and acceptance. For in that moment, amidst the chaos and celebration of the grand reopening, Mark realized that sometimes, the greatest victories are not won through battles fought, but through bridges built with courage, compassion, and a willingness to embrace the unexpected. As he clasped Veronica's hand in his own, a sense of peace washed over him, knowing that in the end, it was love, not hate, that had triumphed over adversity, and that Fabulous would forever stand as a beacon of hope and acceptance in a world too often divided by fear and prejudice. And as the music swelled and the crowd erupted into cheers, Mark knew that this was only the beginning of the next chapter in the story of Fabulous, a story filled with promise, possibility, and the enduring power of love.